Alrighty, and we're on. So, I'm sitting here with Tarkyn Loloselo. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The right way to pronounce it, right?
Yeah.
And funnily enough, so you posted this story the other day, and I'm looking right at it. So we'll start with that because I was like, oh shit, what happened? You posted this story on Instagram, and you had like a bloody eye,
Yeah.
a graze on your face.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, I got into a fight in New Zealand. I'm like, what the hell? Like,
Oh god.
So what happened?
Yeah. So I ended up going back to New Zealand just to refresh my mind, just to fill up my heart again, because both my parents are there and all my family's there. So I think it's important for me to go back to a safe spot just to rejuvenate. Obviously, being away from home is a lot hard. So yeah, ended up going back. Ended up going out in Auckland, enjoying my time here and there, and had a bit of a scuffle with this guy from back home. He's actually based on the Gold Coast. I won't name him on here. Anyway,
No, you don't have to name him. So he was back there at the same time?
Yeah, he was back there as well. He was with his partner, and we got into an exchange of words in the club, and I was just like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. And I was on my way home on the Uber, and he rocks up, doesn't say anything, head kicks me.
Head kicks you?
Head kicks me.
That's a pretty
I know,
extreme first move.
Extreme first move. But at this point, I still had my senses, so everything just turned red, and I was lucky enough to grab him, simple arm drag, took his back, picked him up, slammed him on the ground. And as you can see on my face, the concrete got me good.
Yep.
Massive graze there. And from there, he continued to punch me. So
Wait, so you're on his back or you're on side control then?
So I was in side control then,
Yep.
from the slam, and I immediately jumped straight into a mounted triangle, and I had him in between my legs, and I was like, dude, as my blood's gushing down, I'm like, dude, just calm down, it's fine. I don't want any trouble. Yeah, because it's just, it is what it is. Two drunk boys get into an argument, you don't know what's going to happen. And I was like, dude, okay, calm down. He wasn't calming down, and I'm just like, okay, you're going to sleep, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Turn the angle, and then put him unconscious, and then...
With the triangle?
With the triangle, yeah.
From mount?
From mount,
hey,
yeah.
Good on.
So it was, good technique, I guess.
That's it.
Yeah, to keep myself safe, and also to, I guess, diffuse the situation.
Yeah.
And then the cops came. They saw on the cameras that I was acting in self-defense because I was trying to get in my Uber.
Yep.
And he just full rocks up, head kicks me. So I was like, what the hell?
What kind of a head kick? Was it a jumping head kick or you literally just a roundhouse kick?
Your roundhouse kick. Roundhouse head kick, straight, clean. And I was like, holy heck. I swear, if I was someone like Kamaru Usman, I would have gone down straight away. But unfortunately, I got a coconut head. So good coconut genes there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was lucky enough. And then the cops rocked up, had a chat to me. And then... yeah, just like that. They actually paid for my Uber back home, so shout out to the Auckland cops. Thanks for that, for Uber back home. But lucky to come out not that scathed, but yeah, it is what it is, bro.
I think that's one of the advantages to the grappling arts, in the sense that I think a lot of styles they always want to talk about you want to be able to control somebody, right?
Yes.
But how you control somebody, there's two very different poles in terms of how you control somebody, right?
Very true.
So you can control them very violently. So if I knock you out, I've controlled you.
Exactly.
Right? But, on the other end of the spectrum, through, say, Jiu Jitsu and grappling, if I bring you to the ground, I take you to somewhere that you're not comfortable. I get on your back so that you can't attack me.
Yeah.
I can attack you. I've got all my weapons. I can slowly put you to sleep, almost like an anaconda, strangling its prey, right? And then from that perspective, it's a very different feeling. It's a very de-escalating kind of a feeling.
Yes.
Right? So when he woke up, was he just like, oh, what happened?
Yeah, well, he woke up and the cop was on top of him just saying, calm down. You've been choked unconscious. It's fine. Do you know where you are? And he's just like, yeah, I'm in New Zealand. I'm here on holiday. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
And it's just, it was crazy. And it was funny because all my boys left. Because I was like, yeah, everyone just go, it's fine. I'm literally just going to... I'm literally just going to stay for another halfie and then I'll catch an Uber home.
Yeah.
And then so I was by myself, just, lucky, very lucky.
So, have you spoken to him since? So obviously you knew this guy, right? So
yeah, I kind of knew this guy. I don't know him personally, but he actually sent me a message on Instagram the morning after, and he said, sorry, I got too hot-headed, just trying to impress my new misso.
Yeah.
All these things. Like, fair call to them, like, if you're in a new relationship, all you want to do is, protect your girl or try to assert your dominance, as a man.
Yep.
And, we just said, it's fine. It is what it is. As long as you're not hurt, like, I'm not going to press charges, anything like that. It's fine. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, look, I think that also speaks to his character to be able to reach out the next day and say, hey,
it's awesome.
I'm sorry, I did the wrong
awesome.
thing.
Yeah.
For some people, they might be like, they walk away from that exchange and they go, you know what, F that guy. Blah,
exactly.
blah, blah, and they still hold this animosity.
Exactly.
Right? All right. So how I met you was you're actually on Grapplemania a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. And very blessed to be on there. The Grapplemania 3 card. So cool.
Yeah, and so, we're having as I try and chat with people beforehand and find out a little bit about their stories. And then, you started telling me all these different things. And I was like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. I need to actually find out more.
Yeah.
So let's sort of wind it back for people.
Okay.
So where were you born?
So I was born in the beautiful islands, the Solomon Islands.
Yep.
So that's based in the Pacific Ocean, or Pacific Islands, as you would say. And grew up there for about 3 years.
Yep.
And then when my little sister was born, we moved to South Bank in Brisbane.
In Brisbane?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went to Brisbane first?
Yeah, went to Brisbane first. We were kind of finding our feet because Dad was trying to find a job, and we were deciding where we wanted to go. And he was lucky enough to get a gig with Air New Zealand.
Okay.
As a aircraft engineer. So,
wow.
Yeah, Dad's doing really well.
Yep.
Was lucky enough to move to New Zealand in 2003.
Yep.
And still in the same house in South Auckland. So grew up in South Auckland and did all my schooling there.
Yep. Do you have any memories of, before the age of 3, it's probably pretty hard to remember anything about the Solomon Islands.
Yeah.
But do you have any memories, I guess, of the Solomon Islands or South Bank before you moved to New Zealand? Yeah,
well, very, very fond memories. But I think the one thing that really caught my eye and that what I always remember is just how happy people were. Especially in the islands, like it's a really simple lifestyle, but man, like the smallest thing, like I remember going to like a fruit shop and getting like a fresh coconut, and my auntie's bringing it back or the uncle's bringing it back, and just the joy that my cousins, were like, oh my gosh, it's so cool.
It's a fresh coconut.
Yeah, it's a fresh coconut, or like to see, like my uncles climb up a tree and get a mango and all these things. I think the purity in that is what I always remember. Just how happy and how simple life is back there.
There's a great anecdote that I really enjoyed, and originally the story is about like a Mexican fisherman.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard this one, but so I'm gonna change it a little. To sort of reflect the islands, right?
Awesome.
So Coach Renato over there just saying good day to me. When we think about, a simple life, right? So let's say like this guy from Australia, businessman from Australia, goes over to the Solomon Islands.
Yep.
And he meets one of the locals there. And the locals, he's climbed up a tree, grabbed this coconut, and he said, oh, come, try some of this coconut. And he goes, this is the best freaking coconut I've ever had in my life.
Okay.
And so then, the businessman says to the local guy, he goes, you know what, why don't we collect a few more coconuts?
Yep.
And then we'll go to the markets and we'll sell them.
Okay.
And then the local guy goes, okay, yeah, and then what? And then he goes, okay, well, once we make some money from selling the coconuts at the local market, we'll get a few more boys, we'll collect more coconuts, and then we'll start selling them into other markets, markets that aren't local. We'll go we'll sell them in Australia, like back in Sydney, people would love these coconuts. And then the local guy goes, okay, so then what? And he goes, okay, well then what we'll do is we'll plant some coconut trees, we'll make a coconut farm, buy machinery to harvest these coconuts, and we'll start exporting these worldwide.
And expand,
right? Yeah. And then the local guy goes, okay, and then what will we do? And then goes, well, look, by that stage, this will probably be 20, 30 years down the line, but we'll have a really, really fantastic business selling coconuts. We'll be rich and wealthy.
Yep.
And then, we'll probably just kick back, on the islands with our families and just drink coconuts all day.
Yeah.
And the local guy looks at him and he sort of pauses and then he goes, but I do this every day. Like, why do I need to go through all of that just to get back to where I am?
Wow. Right? Wow.
So, and I really like that anecdote just because it makes, I think a lot of times in life we always we start chasing these things.
Yes.
And we chase and we chase and we chase, but then we sort of lose sight of what is the purpose that we chase these things for.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the grounding is really, really important. Like, and that's not a slight to say that, you know, you shouldn't chase things. You should absolutely chase things.
Yes. No, I agree.
But you got to chase the things that are close to your heart.
Yes.
So if the whole idea behind doing this whole exercise of, like, you know, expanding these markets, building these businesses was just so that you could kick back and relax, it's probably the wrong purpose.
Yeah, very
right?
true.
But if the purpose was that, you know, you actually enjoyed doing business and you enjoyed growing things and you thought, you know, by doing this, I can actually help the community.
Yes.
I'll be able to reinvest, you know, some of the money to hire local people, give them work, you know, give them those sorts of things, then that's a totally different reason.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
So, you know, it's just one of those things that, you know, I think, as you said, you know, life was so simple.
Yeah, man.
And I think there's a beauty in that, right? Like when life is so simple,
the
simple things matter. Oh. You know, if everything was to turn to shit, all you'd want is the people around you that you love. To, you know, to spend your last days with, essentially, right?
100%.
Okay, so, so did you go to school at all in Queensland, or did you only start schooling in?
No, I started schooling in New Zealand. Primary school. Shout out to Weymouth Primary School. And then I attended a very prestigious school called St. Peter's College in Auckland. Catholic, all Catholic boys school. Grew up as a Catholic, and no regrets in high school. I love my high schooling days. Awesome. I used to spend probably an hour 30 to 2 hours travel time because I stayed out of the city.
Wow.
Every morning. And my brother studied in a school nearby me as well, so we used to catch like the 5 o'clock train every morning just to get to school. And you know, it's those days where like I really appreciate my brother for looking out for me. You know, I was young. He was quite young as well, but those times we spent really grew our relationship together.
So he's older?
Yeah, he's older. He's 3 years older than me.
3 years older. Yep. And then, so from a schooling perspective, like how did your teachers describe you? Like what would your primary school teachers say? And what kind of kid were you?
I think my primary school teachers would say I was really quiet, just because I was obviously new to New Zealand. I stayed to myself, was really quiet, really active. Like I would always get involved, but I would be self-centered, stay to myself. And then when I got to high school, that's when I started being a clown, and my kind of personality grew from there. And a lot of my high school teachers, they always come into class and they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's going to be a good day. Tarkyn's in school." So I love high school. I think high school for me was a real stepping stone to understanding the person you want to be in your life. You know, if you want to be the guy who, you know, is a good person, does good things, you know, all those things happens when you're in high school. That's the foundation to what happens after life, I guess.
So why do you say that? Is that just because of the people that you met, like your friends and that sort of thing, or?
No, and I think a massive thing is your environment. So for me, where I grew up, it's, I would say, Mount Druitt equivalent. South Auckland, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of things that people that just stay in the hood. They don't get out. They never
get out.
I had so many boys that had scholarships, rugby scholarships, league scholarships, had all the potential in the world, but they just couldn't let their environment, you know, let go of that environment. And I was lucky enough that I had the support and I had the belief that I know I can, like, this isn't just it. So I'm very blessed. Like I said, I'm always blessed. And the reason why I say it's a massive for your environment and how it shapes you is I was just a boy from the hood. I'm just a boy from the hood. I come to a really prestigious school and it's changed my life. So kudos to, I guess, my environment at the time and especially my environment now. So it's good.
Yeah, it's funny because like when you're growing up, you don't think about, you know, these perspectives that you get given. So as an example, you know, the first sort of lenses that you get to view the world is almost through your parents' eyes.
Yes.
You know, what their fears are, what their concerns are, they're going to pass those to you. Right? And then as you get older and then you establish your own friend group, it's your friends that will sort of dictate how you view the world, because no one wants to be the odd one out. You know,
no way.
As much as, you know, people, like there are people that, you know, innately are more leaders, like have leadership potential, so to speak. They still don't want to be ostracized. Right? And part of being a good leader is actually also understanding, you know, what your friends are about and how you fit in and how you can then coach and guide, you know, to use that leadership for a positive aspect.
100%.
So, like when you mentioned that sort of area that you're growing up in, so for people that may not know those areas, whether it's Mount Druitt or the south of New Zealand, it's essentially like what areas we're talking about are like lower socio-demographic areas. 100%. So, you know, crime's a little bit higher. People often probably don't make as much money.
No.
And, you know, from that perspective, you can get stuck in these areas thinking that you don't deserve any better.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And there's also a little bit of comfort, you know, in knowing that environment.
Yeah.
So yes, it might be gritty and all this sort of stuff, but like people actually fall in love with that environment because they're in the environment that they know.
Yeah, exactly. And that's their safe haven.
It's their safe haven. Yeah. And they're more scared to actually venture out of that because they feel like, oh, if I get out of there, I'm an imposter.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And like the reason why I can speak to that, so when I was growing up, I grew up out west as well.
Yeah.
So not quite Mount Druitt, but St. Clair.
Yeah,
slightly
St. Clair.
more, you know, affluent
still
area.
St. Clair,
still,
man.
So, but, you know, I lived in St. Clair till the age of 10.
Yeah.
And, you know, for me, like I don't have any negative memories. Like it was all quite fond memories. We lived on a cul-de-sac. We were like the corner house of this cul-de-sac.
Oh, okay.
And I used to play with the other kids on the street.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, like I didn't really realise that at the time, but yeah, there were some things that were a little bit racist, but I don't think it was intentional. It was just because I was different, right?
100%.
And but like, you know, with my parents, like we never really like talked about anything like that. We never really had that as any sort of consideration.
Wow.
It was my parents were always just focused on, okay, we're going to work, we're going to generate money, and we're going to try and establish ourselves a better life.
Okay.
So even when we were growing up in that house, my parents had bought like another block of land, but that was in Borkham Hills. So, so northwest of Sydney.
Northwest, yeah.
Slightly more affluent area.
Yeah.
And over the years, they were like, you know, slowly this house would get built, and then eventually we moved into that house.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, the benefit of having experienced life in those areas where it's a little bit, you know, grittier.
Yes.
Is that you can, I feel like it makes it easier to associate with all different types of people. And it's not to say that the people are inherently bad. I think it's just that the opportunities are different.
100%. Right?
And then, you know, when they get those, as you're saying, like some of these guys were getting, you know, footy scholarships and all that sort of stuff. They're not willing to take the plunge because unfortunately it's too distant to what they know. It's out of their comfort zone, right? And a lot of the times, you know, I think some of these guys if they do end up taking it, they self-sabotage themselves.
Yeah.
To end up back to where they were.
Exactly.
Right? Did you, you know, sort of see any of that when you were growing up?
Yeah, there were a few guys that, you know, took really good rugby scholarships.
Oops, sorry, wrong one.
That took really good rugby scholarships, and, you know, they did well for a few years, and then, like I said, they just couldn't escape, I guess, the reality and what, you know, people were like back in the area, which is really unfortunate, man. Like, but then on the other spectrum, there's a lot of success stories. Yeah. You know, and those are the ones that, you know, like myself, I look towards, you know, like I look at this certain person, I'm like, man, he made it out. Why can't I make it out? Yeah. You know, why can't I keep going? Why can't I move to Oz? Why can't I start a career? Yep. And pursue, you know, something as well. But like I said, those doubts start to creep in, like, oh, am I out of my comfort zone? Like, should I be here? Should I really be here? But I guess that just goes to show your character. And if you really want something, like, you really push to be like, nah, I'm not going to let these demons creep back inside. Like, I'm not going to let this guy be like, I'm one of those guys. I'm not going to be a statistic. Yeah. I'm going to be that guy.
That gets out.
Good, gets out, exactly. Yeah.
Was it what about the teachers? Like, were the teachers very supportive, like, in that sense? Like, do you have any notable influences that really encouraged you in the right directions?
Yeah, so I did have a, Mr. Hahn. This is my high school teacher. He was like a relief teacher. So he wasn't a proper school teacher, but he was like a relief teacher. But he actually married a girl from my street.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when he found out I was from the street, and we were both, you know, he was teaching at this procedure school, he kind of babied me and, you know, looked out for me rather. And he's one person that I was like, okay, Mr. Hahn knows where I'm from. Like, he's keeping me accountable. I need to actually focus in on school because I could easily fall back and, you know, obviously not get the opportunities that I have now.
So then when did the sport come into it? So were you playing sport throughout school?
Yeah, so I'm still now. I'm still a small boy. Not now, but growing up I was real small. I was weighing probably like 65 kgs. Yeah. Like,
I love how for a coconut you say that's small because
exactly.
That's like the average Asian. Right? Like I'm like 67, 68 kilos walking weight nowadays. I used to be around 70, but like I've dropped a little bit of weight.
Oh, okay.
Just to make it easier to make for weight cuts and things like that.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. That's smart. That's real smart. Yeah. So I was 65 kgs max, and growing up I was always like, oh man, I wish I was a bit stronger. But I always had to fall to technique. And I think at the time I was really heavily involved in rugby sevens. And all throughout high school I was playing rugby here and now and then. And then when I was 14, that's when I had my first major surgery, which took me out of contact sport, which was a full shoulder reconstruction.
Wow.
At 14, crazy.
So what was the injury? How did it happen?
I was actually in a training camp for the New Zealand Sevens. It was like this New Zealand Sevens tournament that we had when I was about 13. And this guy, big, massive fellow, ran off the ruck, and I just, tried to put in a lazy shot and stupid idea.
Yeah.
Ended up dislocating it and then popping it back in. Back then, especially back then, like, even though it's only a few years ago, back then it's like, concrete, have some concrete pills. Yeah, harden up, bro. Like, that's just the culture it was, you don't understand, if you pop it back in, you're actually going to cause more damage, to the shoulder itself. So I popped it back in myself and then kept playing, and then just a few weeks after that, just kept popping out constantly. And then I was like, okay, I probably need to tell my parents, like, I'm actually sore. And then
just sore.
Yeah.
The shoulder keeps popping in and out.
I was
and
like,
he was gonna Dad, I'm sore.
Yeah, so I told my dad, I was like, Dad, I'm sore. And he goes, yeah, because you don't eat enough taro and mussels. Like, Dad was a massive taro guy, so he's like, yeah, you don't eat enough taro and mussels and all these vegetables that I tell you to eat, so that's why you're sore. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I told Mum, and Mum was the same. She's like, no, you're just, like, get that out of your head. Like, it's fine. And then, typical Islander parents, I love them though. And then ended up going to one of our school trainings, and then my shoulder popped out, and this one really hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, man, like, okay, I need to tell my coach, like, I can't play this Saturday. Asked my coach, and he's actually the headmaster now at St. Peter's. So shout out to James Bentley. Okay. And he was like, okay, go to the physio, just see what happened. And the physio was like shocked. Yeah. She was like, dude, your shoulder's absolutely destroyed. Yeah. What the hell have you been doing? And I'm just like, I told you it was sore. Like, it was just real sore. Like, every time it would pop out literally like butter. Like,
oh, wow.
Like one little push, one little fan, it would just pop out. And I just put it back in. But it was that transition was so smooth that all the ligaments was just loosened up. Yeah, it was gone. Went to the physio, and then she was like, oh, okay, we need to go get you like proper scans. Got scans, and then literally 2 days after had surgery. And my parents were like, what the hell?
Yeah, wow.
What the heck?
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, yeah, I told you it was sore.
Yeah, jeez.
So, yeah, that kind of took me out of contact sport. Rugby, so to speak, and that's where I found my love for touch. And I grew to love touch, playing touch footy, because back then you kind of played touch in the summer and then you play rugby in the winter. Yeah. So that was the whole
idea.
That was the whole idea. But I kind of just stuck playing touch because for me, touch was it was smaller. I could use my agility. I could be more technical. Yeah. And going through high school, I was just stuck to touch, and it was kind of frowned upon if you didn't play rugby. Yeah. But I was like, dude, my shoulder's stuffed. Like, I literally can't do it. So I told myself, nah, I'm just gonna focus on touch. And it was only until I was about 15, 16, still in high school, and I was like, man, I think I should probably give touch a proper crack, like all my friends at the time were making the New Zealand team, so they were going on tours to Gold Coast, going to Brisbane, and all my mates were making these teams, and I wasn't getting a look at, and I had no idea why. I was just like, maybe I was just real bad at the game, but I told myself, man, I need to, if this is my career path, if this is what I want to do, if this is my edge over the rugby guys or anyone else, I need to somehow focus in on this goal. So yeah, all through high school, I'm about 16 years of age now. All my mates are still making it, and I'm just like, dude, what the hell?
Can't get in.
Can't get in, man. Can't make my debut. So I'm like, okay.
Do you reckon it's because they were doing both sports, and so then the coaches knew them?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing now. There's a lot of politics, and I'm not going to say, that politics was like impacted in that way, but maybe that was obviously an edge they had. The same coaches were the same rugby coaches, same touch coaches here and there. And then there was this one summer, bro, and I'll never forget the summer. This one summer, I turned to my close mates, who are still my close mates now, Darius, Kelly, and Jesse, and I said, boys, okay, these next 3 months, I'm not going to party, because I'm 16 at this age. Like, the party's massive back in New Zealand when you're 16. So I'm not going to party. I just need to run hills, run sand dunes, and I need to do everything I can to make it into this New Zealand team next year. Otherwise, I need to look for something else. Yeah, wow. So I'm just wasting so much time and energy into it. And yeah, it came into fruition that year. The summer passed, and I got named in the New Zealand team for the under 18s, which was crazy. I was like, holy heck! Finally,
you made it.
Yeah, finally getting a look at. But I was kind of I was unprepared for the rise, I would say, that I got, because since that, I got selected on the under 18s, and then we played like the Trans-Tasman series against Oz, ended up losing, but that was kind of like my moment, like that's what put me on the map.
Yeah.
And then after that test series, what usually happens is you have 2 more years at under 18s, and then you have 2 years at under 20s, and then you kind of, whip around the men's for a bit, you play mix, and then you make it to the men's squad. So I was in high school, and it was after our English test. Finished my English test, and my phone starts going off. And this is like just a few weeks after I just played the Trans-Tasman. So not a big deal, but in high school it was a pretty big deal. And then boom, 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 like everyone starts posting on my Snapchat, because Snapchat was big back then.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you made the national squad. And I was like, what the hell? Like, this is unreal. Like, and I called my friends, and I'm like, dude, I told you, like, those 3 months that we dedicated just goes to show. And a lot of the listeners know this as well. A lot of the listeners would be athletes. Like, if you really put your mind to something, you can actually get somewhere.
Yeah.
And
So did your other mates also do the same thing as you for that 3 months?
Yeah, so they were, but they had different goals. Obviously, Jesse was a massive rugby player. He's playing in Newcastle at the moment, rugby player.
Yep.
And both of my closest mates, Jesse and Kelly, are there in the New Zealand touch system now. So we all ended up, doing pretty well in the athlete kind of circle. So, yeah.
Yeah. So then, because touch, obviously, it's not as huge as leagues, as an example, right? Was there any, could you draw an income from it, or like?
Yeah, so we were getting funded, but obviously the touch is a player paid sport at the time. I don't know how it is now, but obviously the only way you would do really well is if you get sponsors and all this other stuff. And I was lucky enough to have, a lot of people supporting me. So I was getting through that a lot, and obviously my parents helped me out a lot. And at the time, the thing was, okay, touch, but I knew if I wanted to make a proper income was to go to league.
Yeah.
So that's how that all started. I was lucky enough to go to Malaysia with the under-20s for the World Cup.
Yep.
Like I said, honoured enough to captain that side as well. Captain that side, and it was actually from that World Cup, one of the Australian managers was like, oh, have you ever played league before? And I was like, no, look at me, I'm just a winger, I'm small, just play touch. And they were like, oh, okay, well, here's my email. And I emailed the lady, and I was like, yeah, I'm keen to come over. Didn't tell my parents. I was like, yeah, because my parents are traditional island parents. They, stay at home, get a job, go to uni, all that stuff. And I was obviously a rebellious child. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. I want to take my chances. I ended up getting offered a league contract up in Goldie.
Yep.
So at the time I was playing for the Gold Coast Titans under 20s, the feeder side. So I was like, have this contract, and I was like, do I tell mom, do I tell my dad, or do I just sign it? Do I just sign it and then tell them? So I was like, yeah, stuff this, I'm going to sign it.
Oh, wow.
So I signed it, and then I told my mum, and I was like, oh, Mum, I need to go to Gold Coast next week. And she was like, what? Why are you going there? And I was like, oh, I just want to go like just for a holiday. And she was like, holiday for what? You got school, and you like, you got to focus.
How are you going to pay for this?
Yeah, how are you going to pay for this? Like, you got uni next year, like you still need to pass your exams. And I'm like, yeah, but like, I just want to go for a holiday. Like, can you pay for my flights? And she's like, no, hell no. And I was like, oh man. So that was a bit of a dud spot. So I was like, okay, I need to ask for some funding. So they ended up paying for my flights just to go over.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh God, thank you. So I rocked up, and it was just like did like a massive tour of the facilities and that type of thing. And I was like, dude, I made the right decision, man. I'm gonna tell Mum. She's gonna be happy as. Went back to NZ, and I told my mum, and she's like, what? So you signed the contract? And I'm like, yeah. And like, I'm moving there. I need to move there in a few months. And she's like, what the heck, Tarkyn? Like, what are you doing with your life? And I'm like, no, trust me. Like, I'm rebellious. I like to take like risks. You only live once, man. Like, you have to take these opportunities when it comes up. So it is what it is. No regrets.
So in comparison to your brother, is your brother the opposite to you? Or
my brother's the opposite, man. My brother would like never see a club in his life. He went to university. He's a podiatrist. Smart fella. So yeah, obviously from total opposites from my brother. Yeah. So that's why I think she was just like, no, just following your brother's footsteps. You'll be all right. You'll get there. And I'm like, yeah, but I think I'm a bit different. Like, I need to be a bit different.
Yeah. So then, when you first get over to the Goldie to play for the Titans, like, how did you find that experience?
Oh, unreal.
Yeah?
Unreal,
it lived up to all the expectations? Or you didn't have any expectations when you
I was just like, to be honest, I was 19, obviously gorgeous looking young man.
Yeah.
Islander.
On the
Goldie. So I was like, dude, this is just trouble waiting to happen. But I'm glad I've honed in on my footy. And I was lucky enough that I had really good coaches. And one of my coaches, Eugene Sutton, he was a Kiwi. So he, always gave me the pep talk like, okay, yeah, you're here, here from NZ, but you're here for footy. You're not here to party. You're not here to do all this other extra curricular stuff. So I was like, yeah, sweet. And I'm glad he was a kind of like a father figure to me. And it was good having him a part of the club because he made sure that I was staying on point. And then I was, making sure that my meal prep was good, my eating was good, I wasn't partying, and I was just focusing on training, which was, shout out to him. He's currently one of the kid coaches for the Q Cup team there, up there now. So it's crazy how you have those influences in your life, and they put you in the right direction. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I think people take for granted. They say that they want to be a professional athlete, but then if you were to treat it like a job. So most people, I guess, if you think about a traditional job, you're there from 9 to 5. Yeah. This is what you do.
Yes.
But being a professional athlete, your hours aren't just 9 to 5.
No, man.
Your diet has to be on point 24/7.
Exactly.
Your sleep needs to be on point 24/7.
Sleep is a big thing.
You can compromise on those things.
Yeah.
But then you're not really being professional in your attitude to how you approach the game.
No way.
So for you then, obviously because you've done touch for such a long period.
Yep.
To transition back to league, like, how did you handle that transition? Was it hard on the body?
Yeah, obviously, because I was still about 85, 80 kgs at this point, but just real thin, no muscle, but just real fast. Like, I backed my footwork the whole time, and the transition, the skills were real transferable, but in terms of the contact, it was just ridiculous, man. Like, imagine me running into 120 kg blokes, just guys that have been gymming since they were 14. Yeah. And that's the one thing I struggled with was the contact. So my whole philosophy when I was playing was, okay, I don't like getting tackled. Let's just try not to get tackled.
Let's run past
this guy. Let's just change direction. And I found a lot of success, and I think that's why I grew my game from that.
Yeah.
Was just not so much being technical, was just the fear of getting tackled and getting smashed and getting injured and telling one, coming back home and being like, oh yeah, my mum told you so. Like, all those thoughts ran through my mind at a young age because I felt as though I matured a lot. I matured quickly rather, being in that New Zealand professional environment at a young age. So all these thoughts were going through my head. I said, okay, like, you have to somehow be real technical. You can't be all willy-nilly now.
Yeah.
You need to be smart about your choices.
and protect your asset, right?
Yeah.
Your body's your asset.
Exactly.
So, if you want to have a long career doing this, you need to actually protect your body, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's it.
So then, out of curiosity, because you went to a few different teams as well.
Yep.
Culture between the teams, like both from a player perspective and then also from a management perspective. I'm sort of curious, what your thoughts are on how each of the different teams approached it, and were there certain approaches that you liked and that you didn't like?
Yeah, so I would compare the two on, I would say, the New Zealand thought process of approaching a game and their kind of mindset is very different to how the Aussies think. And I've talked about this a lot too, because the Aussies have a different mindset on whine and grind. Just whine and grind. Like, it doesn't matter if you drop the ball on this set, the fourth set, we're going to keep doing the same thing. The fifth set, we're going to keep doing the same thing. Just slowly grinding the whole game.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say the New Zealand thought process, when I was in the system, was more so, okay, like, we'll wait for the third play and this has to be the go. And if that doesn't work out, then it's like, you start get degraded, and then that's when the whole ball game and the whole game starts to shift. Mentality-wise, the boys are dropping down, and it's like, it's real hard to come back from that. But your game plan from an Australian point of view was the whole game, we're just going to grind. Yeah. We're just going to grind. If we don't get on the second, we'll get on the third. If we don't get on the third, we'll get on the 18th. And that mindset was one thing that I implemented when I came to Australia, was changing that aspect of my Kiwi coaching side was to be like, okay, we don't have to score on this set. It doesn't have to happen all now, you know? Like, be patient, things will come, and I'm very glad that that's transferred to Jiu Jitsu as well.
Yeah.
Like, first round, you go for an outside heel hook, what are you going to do? The guy mounts you, all these things, and you play in your head. Yeah. Now you're back the whole fight. But if you're trying to go for an outside, switch it to an inside, switch it to a Z-lock, you have all these options and you're being patient, then that's when you can start to grind the whole fight through. Yeah. So that's one thing that's massively different in terms of culture and the thought process.
Yeah, they're sort of, when I think about those two approaches, it's like the war of attrition.
Yes.
So you're sort of saying that the Australian mentality is it's a war of attrition. We're going to grind these guys down,
exactly.
And whoever gives up, well, we're going to then start steamrolling them.
Exactly.
Whereas the New Zealand-based approach was very momentum-driven.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Because I think as we've seen from how New Zealand footy sometimes goes, it's like once they get ahead, they just go light years ahead, right? Like they've got that momentum where it's like, okay, we're going to destroy these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when it goes bad, it can also go very bad as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting difference between the two cultures. I think from a sporting perspective, obviously we're both countries that have a very low population density, but perform very well on the global scale,
100%,
irrespective of that. So there's something to that. And then what about in terms of management of the clubs? Like, and you don't have to name which club was what or whatever, but I'm just curious, was there, in terms of management styles and things like that, was there anything that you noticed that was really good about a specific place versus a different place? Yeah,
well, obviously being in the NRL system when I was a bit younger, that was a massive change for me, obviously coming from New Zealand, but I was lucky enough that New Zealand Touch being in the trajectory that they were in, they implemented a lot of things that was real similar to when I came over. So it wasn't a massive change, but in terms of like the facilities, in terms of, you have mental health check-ins, you have nutritionists, you have all these things, all these like aspects that you have offered to you. It's like, oh my gosh, like you're kind of like, there's no way you're going to fail. There's no way that you can't perform. And then it just goes back to yourself to like, okay, if I give you all these options, are you going to use them? Or are you just going to say, yeah, I have these options, I have access to physio, I have access to nutritionists, but I'm not going to use them? Then that's kind of, the elephant in the room. It's his fault, it's not everyone else's fault.
Yeah.
But the Titans system in particular, the Western Mustangs, club, man, the facilities were unreal. Like, oh goodness me, I rocked up to the gym when I was doing my tour. I was like, man, this is a gym. This is a gym. Like,
we have the hyperbaric chamber.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, they have proper weights that like the numbers. It's a 2. It's not like a 1 because the 2 got scratched off. Like proper weights. I'm like, okay, this is a big deal. I need to proper perform. And they had like one of those Astro strips in the middle, and at the time it was real new. That was the new gym layout, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is cool. It's cool
until you have to push the sled."
Yeah, exactly. Like, stop this.
Get rid of this Astro.
Get rid of this Astro.
Okay, so then, so how long were you at the Titans for?
So I was there for about a year and a half. I was contracted for 2.
Yep.
But at the time I was doing real well actually, and I wanted to stay at the Titans, but I actually got an offer to go move up to the Cowboys Theatre Club up in Mackay.
Yep.
So I moved up there after the Titans, which I think I should have stayed in the Titans system, like looking back at it now. But I was young and I was like, man, I just want to travel, like
experience the world.
Yeah, exactly. Experience Australia. It's a new country for me, and I'm just like, you know. So I ended up moving up there for a few months, and then COVID hit. So it was kind of like I don't know, how would you say, a blessing that I ended up going back home after that. But yeah, like I said, it's everything happens for a reason, I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty interesting thing to think about, because in the absence of that, you know, your whole career trajectory would have been totally different.
Exactly.
Right?
100%.
But now you're forced to make this decision. Okay, do I stay in this country when everything gets shut down?
Exactly. Or
with no, you know, visibility over what the future may hold.
Nothing.
Or do you go back home and just spend the time with the people that you love?
Exactly.
Right? So it wouldn't have been a tough choice, like, I guess, or was it an easy choice for you?
I think for me, I really had to look at myself, and I think that's what my South Auckland mindset creep back in, was like, okay, when the shit gets going, who's there when the ship's sunk? Who's there when things don't go your way? And it's your whānau. So the whānau is the Māori word for family. And for me, my whānau was, you know,
all back
there, and I had no friends here. And at the club I was at, I was with 2 other Kiwi boys, and we looked at each other and we're like, man, can we do this? Because we can stay in Australia, but like it's going to be me, you, and, you know, like
for however long.
Yeah, for however long, we don't know. So at the time, and then on the other end of the spectrum was like, okay, maybe this is a sacrifice that we need to do in order to, you know, get to something else. So I think I fell towards the sacrifice side initially, because I was like, okay, I've already made a big sacrifice coming to a new country. Why not take another sacrifice, hold it out for a few months or a few years, stay in Australia, and then see what happens. And then as, you know, the news starts creeping in, like, oh my gosh, Italy's shutting down, Europe's shutting down, all these things, it's like, okay, I think it's a bit far-fetched. I think I should go back home.
Yeah.
So I ended up choosing to go back home, which, looking back in it now, I think it was the right decision to be, like you said, close with your family and your loved ones, and especially in that situation when no one knew what was going to happen.
So then when you came back home, I guess, what did your parents say? Like, did you speak with your parents when you were making that decision, and did they say, hey, come back home, or did they say stay? Or?
So it was kind of on the fence, because I'm a massive mama's boy. So my mum was like, yeah, come back. Like, come back. I'll take you back. I'll forgive you for leaving me. She was like, come back. But then my dad was like, look, son, like, I think we see, like, you're driven, like, you're different to your brother. Like, if you want to stay there, then we'll try and support you. But there's only a few things we can do on an online basis. You know, what if they shut down all online transactions and all this thing? You know, you really didn't know at that stage. So Dad was real, okay, if you want to stay, you can stay, but just know that we're going to try our best to support you, but we can't control things out of our control.
Yeah.
And Mum was like, nah, come home.
So when all the shutdowns happened, the club basically said we can't pay you. Is that what happened?
Yeah, the club was just saying, look, honestly, we can house you and we can pay you up until
this date or something.
Yeah, we can pay you up to your contract. And at the time, I was contracted for 1.5 years, but I didn't know how long that was going to last. So I was lucky enough to get a payout. So they paid me out, and I was like, okay, sweet.
Just go.
I think I just need to get out. I just need to go back home. Yeah.
Have the security of knowing. And then you got the money too, which is actually not a bad
fine.
thing.
Yeah, it's fine. Right.
So then, in that time when everything shut down in New Zealand, because obviously New Zealand had fairly big lockdowns as well, right?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? What was your mentality in that state?
Yeah, I honestly think COVID was a blessing for me, because whereas a lot of people saw it as, and I think I'm just lucky enough that I was isolated with my family.
Yeah.
A lot of people were isolated without their families. So that's why it had a massive impact on them. But for me, honestly, like, it was a blessing, because it brought me back to my family, and 2, it made me think, like, okay, you can have all these sacrifices, but when the going gets tough, who are the real ones that are going to show up and actually be there for you?
Yeah.
So my whole mentality going back home was, okay, let's focus on our training. So I put myself in the best possible shape that I could, league-wise. I was still training at home, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go for... My routine at the time was I would wake up, go for a 10K run, and then hit the gym. I had a home gym, and then I would just go out to the paddock with my brother, force him to kick some balls up for me, and played with him for a bit and my sister. And then, reset, go for another run, swim, just make sure that I'm still training, because you don't know if everything could...
And the call-up could be...
Yeah, the call-up could be... It could all turn to shit, or it could be like, okay, sweet, come back to Oz, you know? Yeah. And my manager at the time was just saying, look, I really don't know what's going to happen. And he was just saying, just try and stay healthy, stay with your family. Like, we really don't know what's going to happen. So my mentality was actually pretty strong throughout the first COVID lockdown, because I was, one, surrounded by people that I knew. I was in a familiar space, and I was like, okay, my mentals are good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to touch on you mentioned your player manager, right?
Yep.
So I'm a little bit curious about how you found him, or I'm guessing it's him?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So how you found him, or how did he reach out to you, and at what stage in your career did you find that? Because I think for a lot of athletes, especially in like combat sports, it's sort of like touch, in the sense that, you're sort of paying your own way to compete.
Exactly.
And so a lot of these guys, will either have to take jobs or do other things to try and fund their way through their amateur career.
Yeah.
And so it's always very interesting in the more established sports that when there's a larger support network, because there's people that are there that can really assist in sort of helping you to find, those opportunities.
Exactly.
And probably also help you find sponsorships and that kind of thing too, right?
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my manager was Luke Strama. He's based in Brisbane.
Yep.
Awesome guy. I've known him since I was 18. So he actually got me the gig.
For the Titans? Or?
For the Titans, yeah. So he made sure everything was all right, and got me the flights over. And he's been, obviously my day one since that. And he is still doing his thing now. Obviously we had to part ways because I
not
left.
Doing footy anymore.
Yeah, not doing footy anymore.
Yep.
But he's got a massive client base, and he's a real driven and family man, and he's awesome, man. He helped me through a lot mentally as well, because he was like a father figure for me. Obviously being away from home, he was based in Brizzy, I was based up in Goldie, so it was not that much of a drive. And he was a massive figure in terms of making sure that, okay, like, I'm your agent, but I don't have to be, it's not just like that. It's we're a friend, I'm your mate, I'm a father figure. So massive raps to him for keeping me through. Obviously that difficult phase for everyone. He was a massive rock in that situation, mentally and obviously physically, with helping me out. So it was good.
So was he the one that reached out to you? So he obviously had seen your highlights or had been following you.
Yeah. So he reached out to me back in 2017 when I was still in high school, but he was based in Brizzy, and his nephew, I versed his nephew. His nephew was playing for the Australia touch team, and we versed each other in the under-18s in that tournament.
Yeah.
And he was watching, and then I was lucky enough to do like have a pretty good performance in their series. And he messaged me on Facebook. Yeah, because I had Facebook back then.
Yeah.
And, Facebook was a big thing. He messaged me and he was like, hey, like, I'm an agent here in Aussie. Would you be interested? And then it was perfect timing, because then at that time, that's when I got offered from the lady, the manager. So I was like, oh, okay, I don't have to deal with the stuff, ship it off to him, and then, yeah, he set it up. So, yeah, really lucky, I guess. The timings was perfect. Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So then, let's go back to when you were in New Zealand. So when things were starting to end in terms of lockdowns and things like that, like what happened in your career then?
Yeah, so I was playing for the Howell Hornets, which is a prestigious club back there, and at the time it was like I said, we were just coming out of lockdown, and I was like, okay, I have the option of playing local footy, but what was the whole buzz around local footy at the time was everyone from Queensland, everyone from New South Wales, all the Kiwis who were playing in the top leagues there went back to New Zealand, same as me. So that local competition was absolutely stacked, man. It was ridiculous.
All the talent was back.
Yeah, all the talent was back. The Dragons players, Warriors players, everyone went back because we were in the same situation.
Yeah.
And that just made the local footy scene just absolutely go crazy. So, yeah, they were saying, like, normal Fox games, that's what the comp's called. Normal Fox games would get, a few hundred people, but every game that was there that year, 2020, was just stacked. And it was a good atmosphere, man. It was bloody awesome. Great. It was awesome.
And people also probably looking for entertainment too,
exactly.
Right?
Get out of home. Yeah. People wanted to get out and just look for entertainment, not just watch something from the screen. Yep. So it was a massive indicator that, like, okay, footy's back. Yep. Let's all get around and let's all go to your local team and support. So it was awesome. Yeah.
And so then how did you end up coming back over to Australia?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to play really well for the Howell Hornets, and my debut game was actually televised.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was televised, and then I was still on YouTube now. Yeah, but if you look at it now, look real skinny. Yeah, so it was televised, and back then I was still pretty young. I was still 21 rather, and I was I just need to play good footy, get back into playing good footy. I've had a really long preseason because I've been training, I haven't played footy in New Zealand yet at this point in terms of league. So no one knew who I was. All they knew was I was a touch player. They went to Oz. They got contracted. Like, how the fuck did this guy get contracted?
You weren't even playing the right sport.
Nah, exactly, right? Exactly. So I had a lot of, I would say, naysayers and a lot of people saying, oh, let's see if he can, pull his finger out of his ass and actually perform. Yeah. And like I said, and it seems to be a recurring thing where I keep proving people wrong. Like when I say that I'm going to do something, like I really mean that. And I put myself in a position where I have the best success to be successful in what I'm going to say or what I'm saying that I'm going to do. So I was lucky enough to, shut all that, head noise, I'd say, on the local scene and just go out there and perform really well. And it was after, I think, the round 3. So we played round 1 and we got televised, and I was like, okay, I'm feeling real well. Round 2 came around, played another good game, and I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I might just stay at home. Like, this is easy as hell. Round 3 came along, and then Luke rang me up, and he goes, bro, like, you're playing real good footy. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm real happy. Like, my family's here, and like my first time.
You're in a good space.
Yeah, I'm in a really good space, and I can just focus on playing footy. And he's like, yeah, but you got a contract to come to play under Manly for the feeder club here. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll get back to you. I just want to focus in on playing footy here. Yeah. So I kind of like snobbed them for like a few weeks because I was just like, oh, like I said, I guess my South Auckland mentality came back where I'm happy.
You're comfortable too.
I'm comfortable, bro. I'm real comfortable. And I needed, and I was only after those few weeks where I was like, okay, you're comfortable, but like everyone says, if you're uncomfortable in an uncomfortable position, that's where you grow. Yeah. Because nothing grows in a comfortable environment. Yeah. And that's one quote that really stuck with me. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna answer Luke's calls. I'm gonna answer his messages. I open up my messages, open it up, and he's like, "Man, I've been trying to contact you. Like, you should come. Like, you really need to come. Like, these guys are really interested." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." So and after that, I was like, "Okay, Tarkyn, like, I guess you're gonna have to go back to Oz now."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, well, here we are again, a second chance. You know, after COVID, hopefully COVID's passed and all this stuff." So I was lucky enough to come over here to Sydney, and here I am in Manly, based in Manly, and playing under the Blacktown Workers. And yeah, I was just really hissing, man. Like, second opportunity. I'm still in the system. Really happy. Moved here with a couple of boys that I knew. So it was, that was a massive good home feeling, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, rocked up, and I was like, okay, well, this is the second chance. We're here in Sydney, like I said, another new location for myself. So I was real excited. Played the first few games for reserve, and then COVID hit again, bro. So I was like, what the heck, man? Like,
can't catch a break.
No way. And I was like, oh goodness. So this is 2021 at this point. And COVID hits again, the second wave. And I'm like, okay, well, I played a few games, and I was contracted for 2 years under Manly. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, I could just wait it out. Or is it a sign that maybe something, footy's pushing me into something else? So I had a lot of thoughts during that time, and I was going through a lot because I recently broke up with my ex-partner. Obviously, I was just starting my new apprenticeship. I left my job because I wanted to start an apprenticeship. So I was going through a lot at that space, and I turned to my faith during those times. And I thought to myself, hey, maybe this is a sign that footy isn't your thing, and that maybe that you should start looking into something else. So it was a massive decision to make, and I turned to my faith and I turned to my close friends, and I was like, boys, I know this is going to sound crazy as fuck, but listen to me. I don't think I should be playing footy. And they're like, what do you mean, bro? Like, dude,
you're so good at it.
Like, you came through touch and you did all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, I have a feeling like I'm not supposed to be doing this. Like, this isn't the way my life happens. And they're like, maybe just have a few weeks to think about it. And I'm like, okay. I was thinking about it, and then the second day I called them, and I'm like, boys, like, I want to rip my contract. And they're like, what? Like, no way. Like, dude, come on. Like, it's fine. Like, just keep sticking at it. And I was like, nah, man. Like, I just know that I wasn't put on this earth to do that. Like, I was put on this earth to do that for a period of time. But I think there's something else.
You come to the end of that time.
Yeah, I come to the end of the time. And like all things, like, come to an end. All good things come to an end. So I was thinking to myself, and I said, okay, I need to make this decision quick, because we're starting to get re-contracts again, and footy season starting to pop back up again. And I went down to the beach because I was in Manly. I'm still there now. Went down to the beach, bro, and I looked up, and I was like, man, someone give me a sign. Like, please give me a sign. Like, do I play footy, or do I look for something new, or do I just focus on my apprenticeship and become a tradie? And I was there in Manly Beach, and I was watching this one kid play footy, just with his mates, and he kept dropping the ball, and I was like, man, like, somehow I feel as though that was a sign with him dropping the ball, or maybe the universe is telling me something, but he kept dropping the ball. He had really good footwork, but he kept dropping the ball during this, just local beach footy like they were playing. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, that's a sign. Like, I need to drop the ball. I need to drop footy. Like, that's a sign he gave me. And called my manager. I'm like, Luke, you're gonna hate me. You're gonna absolutely hate my guts. But I think, I'm done, bro. I think I'm done. And he's like, what? Like, so he flew from Brisbane to Sydney. Yeah. Came here and like had a chat with me. We went out for coffee. Went out for brekkie. I was like, dude, like, yeah, I'm done, man. Like, I think my time's done. I think I need to focus in on something else. Maybe it's my apprenticeship, maybe it's something else, but I just think I need to move on. And that's just, I don't know what's telling me to do, but I just need to. And then it took him a while to, I guess, understand.
You would have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Rocking. Like, you don't even know what you want to do.
Exactly.
But you're just saying you don't want to do this.
Do this, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he was, it was a massive, I guess, thing that he had to take on mentally because, you know, like at the time I was one of his big prospects. And I just said, look, I have to be honest with myself. I need to do something else. And we parted ways, still good, really good mates now. And then during this period was, you know, like I'm freshly single. I'm absolutely just like...
No idea what you want to do
No idea what I want to do in life. I was going down to the beach and I was just, you know, just surfing, trying to learn how to surf. I was focusing on my apprenticeship. And
what trade, sorry?
Tiling.
Tiling, that's right. Yep.
Shout out to North Set. Yeah, so I was tiling. It was my first year at the time. And yeah, bro, it was kind of like a real growing phase, I guess, because I was lost. You know, like I just turned away from footy and I guess I needed to find something because like both of us are real competitive people. We have to stay competitive to, I guess, have a goal towards life. And I was like, okay, well, what's something that I find interesting? And Sam Radova, who's still, he was with Manly with me at the time. He's currently under the Panthers, Penrith Panthers system. One of my close mates still, he was like, dude, you should get into like fighting. And I'm like, what? That's stupid, man. Like, I can't hurt a fly. No way. And he's like, nah, there's some martial arts that you can do that, like, you know, you can, like, you don't really have to punch people. And I was like, well, what's that? And he goes, oh, Jiu Jitsu. And I'm like, oh, well, what the hell is that? And he goes, you know, like Khabib and all those boys, like, they do Sambo, but there's like Jiu Jitsu. Where they hold people down, they end up submitting them, or you know, you can break limbs and stuff. And I was like, but I don't have to punch people. And he's like, no, you don't. There's no like actual punching in jiu-jitsu. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a crack. So I ended up going to Gracie Baja in Brookie just for like a walk-in class. And bro, I got absolutely pummeled, man. Like literally like 60 kg blokes putting me on my ass. And at this point I was still like just fresh off footy. So I was still like strong. And I walked into this jiu-jitsu class and I was like, man, I suck. Like if I was ever in a street situation, man, I would get mauled. Yeah. And since that day I was like, dude, like this is pretty cool.
There's something to this.
This is something to this. Like, there's something to this. So he was like, oh, why don't you come down to my gym in Glebe? Because he was training at Inner West, which I'm still at now. He's like, oh, come down here because we do no gi. And gi is just with, you know, the actual gi. And I was like, oh, so wait, there's a jiu-jitsu where you take this off and you can just fight normally. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to do that. That's way more fun. So ended up going to Inner West on a Monday night. Beginners class, and bro, got absolutely smashed again, man. Like you're talking about like a fresh guy, like footy bloke rocking up to a jiu-jitsu gym, and the only thing I could do was literally wrestle and take side control. Hold
somebody down.
Yeah, was hold someone down and go to side control. That's all I could do. Had no submissions, had no idea on how to control, had no idea how to keep the man controlled. And that was a massive like, oh gosh, Tarkyn. Yeah. Like you're getting excited, like I think this is it. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty crazy how things turned out.
Yeah, well it's you know, so Josh Saunders, HPU coaching, he's been on the podcast before. Yeah. You know, he's a footy boy
man.
As well, right?
He was awesome, bro.
And
have you seen his highlights?
Yeah, well and he's a big boy too, right?
Oh,
like,
huge.
Right? So you know, Josh was saying, you know, like he always had it in his mind that, you know, he was going to perform in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the crowd that he anticipated because it wasn't, you know, the NRL crowd.
Yes.
It was actually at ADCC, you know, and getting to experience those sorts of things. But I think there's a lot of the footy guys are doing jiu-jitsu nowadays because it helps, you know, with the tackling ability.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think we're probably going to see, you know, more and more of that crossover and more clubs sending their guys to whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu to get that experience and getting
Exactly.
comfortable with that style of
Yes.
play. Especially like, because you see it, when guys get tackled, they kick and they buck and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
If you just can hold them so that they don't really kick and buck, like they're
Drains
held and then up
the
they
energy,
get, it drains their
man.
energy, they can kick and buck all they like. But,
That's it.
you over time, it wears on your gas tank.
Yep,
And it just gets, every tackle just gets slightly worse and worse and worse.
Exactly.
And so I think there's a lot of crossover from that perspective. I want to go back to something that you mentioned, and when you talk about faith. So obviously, you grew up in a Catholic household.
Yep.
When you were, I guess when you start asking for these signs and things like that.
Yes.
So can you, I guess, and let me preface this. So I guess the way that I approach God, so to speak, in terms of faith, is that I like to pray. And I'll sort of lead my prayers with more like a gratitude sort of exercise, just saying the things that I'm grateful for.
Yes.
So like yesterday, my wife and I, we her parents came over and they looked after the youngest one, so we could go out and have a nice dinner with some friends.
Cool.
Nice lunch with some friends.
Nice.
And so yesterday it's like I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
To have that experience.
Yes.
Of just experiencing good company, good food.
Wow.
And going through those sorts of things. And then, obviously, a part of prayer is then also, opening up your heart.
Yes.
Right?
That's massive.
And talking about the things that, perhaps you don't have clarity on.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're going through this time where you sort of, you're not quite sure what you want to do, but you have this idea that it's not football anymore.
Yeah.
Like, how did this thought creep into your mind, first of all?
Yeah.
And I guess, were you already starting to lose motivation, or was was there a catalyst, or it just was something that happened over time?
I think, that's a really interesting question. But like I always tell people, what happened during that time was I was just going through a rough patch in my life, and like anything, when you're going through a rough patch in your life, you go back to things you're comfortable with, and for me, that was my faith, and it's different to everyone and how everyone perceives faith. For me, the way I perceive faith and my connection with God is, I see it as a conversation more so. As in, I talk, He gives me signs. It's not instantly. It could take 2 years. It could take a few hours, but that's how I pray. And that's the same situation and the same way I pray since I was in high school, where they taught us, they showed us different ways to pray. There's obviously going to church, physical church. There's obviously gathering with your friends, and then there's also just locking your room, being self-centered, and just praying to Him. And for me, that's one thing I held close to me was, okay, I should just have a conversation with Him. So that's why I said, that's why I went to the beach and I was just having a conversation, like literally just speaking out. Like a random person would walk by, I'm like, who the hell is this guy talking to himself? What do you mean the sign, man? Have an ice cream, you know what I mean? Like, just a random guy talking to himself. But I'm like, nah, like, so that's what I did. I just spoke out, like, just like how we are now, spoke out. I said, look, like, just give me a sign, man, give me a sign. And I go back to that image of, the boy dropping the footy, and I was like, okay, I think that's my sign. That's my sign. But at the time, it's real interesting because I always think about it, and I'm like, man, it could have gone two ways. I could have taken and interpreted the sign differently, or I could have taken it and been like, okay, no, this is the way I need to go. But looking back at it now, man, I'm pretty sure I did it quite right, and I'm on this path for a reason. And like I said, I'm really grateful, man. And like you said, like, I always start off my prayers with a thank you, because you have to be thankful for what you have now, and then He continues to keep giving you blessings, and it's a funny thing how things work, but yeah, life's good, man. Life's really good.
Yeah, I always find that it's an interesting thing to think about, because I think when most I don't know if it's right to say most people, but I think a lot of the times when people do turn to prayer, it's usually because there's something that's gone massively wrong in their life.
Yeah.
And
100%.
then as a result of that, it's almost like if you were to, whenever you ask somebody for something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you just keep asking.
If you just keep asking.
You just keep asking and asking and asking. Like, they're almost going to feel like, hey, you know, you never once expressed any gratitude for what you've got.
What you got,
right? And so that's why I think, you know, the base layer is that, you know, we're so fortunate to be able to live this life.
Yes,
you know,
100%, man.
We are living this life.
Exactly.
Right? And irrespective of whatever the physical circumstances may be, right? And I think, you know, everybody at times will feel lost or uncertain about what the future may hold.
Yeah.
You know, I get those thoughts absolutely as well. You know, most people, they might look at me and they go, oh, you know, Johnny, you run this podcast, you do this, you do that. And they probably think, you know, I always say it's like they probably think that I'm doing a lot better than I am.
Nah, no way.
But see, this is the exact thing that I talk about, right? Because people have this perception in terms of, you know, what it is.
Yeah.
And then I guess, you know, I'm quite self-critical in terms of, you know, how things are. So I have a very different view.
Yes.
But the truth of the reality is probably somewhere in the middle of that, right?
Yes.
So it's, you know, it's in between what somebody else might perceive versus what I perceive.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it any easier for the individual. You're always going to beat yourself up.
100%.
You're always going to be self-critical.
Exactly.
Because if you're not self-critical, all you're doing is you're deluding yourself.
Yeah.
Or you're distracting yourself so that you don't have to reflect.
That's massive. You're distracting yourself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right? And like the reality is that, you know, society today, we're full of distractions.
Oh,
you know, we carry one around no matter where we go. It's a mobile phone, right?
Exactly.
If you've got a smartphone, that's a distraction.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
I can assure you.
I don't care what anyone says.
I don't care.
I'm telling you right now.
Exactly. I guarantee you, most people spend, you know, an extra couple of minutes on the toilet when they shouldn't.
Exactly.
Right? Because they've got this distraction they can just pull out and then just, you know, be browsing something or looking at something.
No,
you know.
100%.
So it's just one of those things that, you know, there's just the world that we live in today.
Yes.
Offers so much that's, you know, bright and shiny.
Yeah.
That you go, oh, look at this. And then it's like straight away, it's like, and even like the way the algorithms sort of teach you, it's like,
exactly.
you know, we only want 1 minute content. Like that's the length of our attention span.
Exactly.
That, you know, I've got to consume this thing in a minute and I've got to swipe, or, you know, if it's
and
TikTok, then automatically swipes.
And then it goes down to our generations where the kids are looking at it and their attention span is literally, a minute?
Yeah.
15-second videos and they switch off to something else. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's real crazy.
So, so it's just one of those things that I think, you know, in hearing you mention the, you know, your faith and things like that, I'm always curious about that.
Yeah.
So when you were young, like, I guess, you're like, and the reason why I bring this up is because your relationship with faith would have changed over the years as well.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
100%.
Can you speak a little bit to that? So I guess, you know, when you were young, like, what did you sort of think about it versus
obviously I had a big influence in my grandma, because my grandmas came over to New Zealand and they were babysitting us growing up. And their whole perception on faith, and it comes from a Catholic standpoint, as you kind of fear God and you kind of fear the thought of dying and you kind of fear the thought of sinning. And you have to do things a certain way, you have to be real nice and, you know, like simple things in order to live a good life. So growing up, being fed that way was, man, I can't lie to my friends, or like I can't like push this guy over that I don't like. And, you know, in high school, and I always used to have this thing. In primary school rather. And I always used to have this thing was, I was real superstitious about everything, because back then I would go to church Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, or like glam it up, everything, suit and tie, everything like that. That's just how I was. That's just what I grew up on. But my faith at that time, you were talking, you know, like the age between 8 to about 12 was fear, where I feared doing something bad because I knew the consequences. I knew that I wouldn't, you know, end up going to heaven, or I wouldn't end up having nice things. I wouldn't end up living the life that I needed to live in order to be classified as a good person, you know? So that was honestly like a really scary time, man, in terms of my faith. I was like scared as hell. I was like, man, there's no other thing. Like, you need to do this. Like, I used to be so superstitious of everything, where I would go to primary school and I wouldn't step on a crack.
Yeah.
Because if
step on a crack, break your mother's back.
Exactly that, bro. Like, I was like, oh man, every single time I would walk in line, like in primary school, I'd be like, nah, I'm not stepping on this crack, man. I love my mom, man. I'm not stepping on this crack. So just small things like that, where I grew up in fear of my faith. And then that kind of changed when I went to high school, because obviously then you kind of learn, I would say, different ways of faith and the different aspects and the traditions of faith now as opposed to where it is, last week or a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then that's when I would say my faith changed in terms of a deeper understanding. Whereas I was more happy to not so much go to church, but happy to lock myself in my room and just have a conversation with my faith, with my God. And that's what my faith changed towards, where it wasn't like, oh, I need to go to church. I need to go to Bible studies. I need to do this. I need to do this. I need to live this life. But I was living so much in fear. And I felt as though that shouldn't be the way, you're always on point. And maybe that's just the way I was, maybe the way I grew up and the environment I was in. Obviously, I had a massive influence from my grandma's, where it was, you have to do this, have to do this. And I was like, yeah, okay. But like I said, when I was in high school, it was more so, man, like a massive free, there's not, you don't just have to go to church to have a connection with God. You don't just have to do these things to still have a good connection with God. There's other aspects, and that's one thing that changed for me was, and like you said, you touched on it before, was your way of praying is your gratitude. And that's one thing I had no idea when I was 8 to 12, like nothing, like that's just not traditionally how you perceive your faith. So like I said, when I went to high school, it was a massive change, opened up, and now I'm really, really happy with my faith. Like, obviously, we've had our ups and downs, as anyone would, but it's one quote that my dad always taught me, and he told me this on his 50th, and he told me this on my 12th birthday and my 21st, and it's the same quote every single time, and it goes, every single person in your life, whether they love you or they hate you, they're going to fail you. Every single person in your life, whether they love you, they're going to fail you. The one person who's not going to fail you and who's going to love you unconditionally is your God and your faith. And that's stuck with me because I can do, good things, I can do bad things, but man, like my faith will always love me. My God will always love me. And I feel as though with that embedded in me, that's my safe haven. That's like, man, okay, that's all. I can be forgiven. But let's not do too many sinful things that I have to ask for a lot of forgiveness. So there's, that's the gray area. That's the
it's always an interesting thing because, a lot of people might think, okay, we don't need religion or faith in this world, and it's almost like we can do away with all the rules, so to speak, or they don't like the idea that there are rules, right? But then it's like if you take away all of the rules, then you wouldn't really be too happy with the outcome.
No way.
Right? Because, you can't operate in a society where there are zero rules.
Exactly,
because there's nothing then to differentiate us from animals. Right?
100%.
And I always think about, this idea that, we as human beings, we have like this consciousness.
Okay.
Right? So the fact that, I have this, I guess you can call it a rational mind or this consciousness that I can sense my 5 senses and be in this body and realize that, okay, I'm alive.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing really else that informs me that consciousness should exist other than my own conscious existence.
Yep.
And through that, I can then infer, okay, so Tarkyn's got a conscious existence. He's conscious as well.
Yep.
But then if you were to take away, all the rules, you still wouldn't be happy anyway.
No.
Right? Because
way.
Okay, I can do whatever I want. Okay, I can go and kill this person.
Yeah.
Right? I've killed that person. Yeah, it satisfied me for a bit.
Yeah.
It doesn't satisfy me anymore. Right? I can go and have sex with this goat.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that satisfied me for a moment, but it doesn't satisfy me anymore. I need to go find something bigger or badder or whatever. And you keep chasing. And I think, the benefit of having some kind of a framework is that it does sort of influence, I think you need a structure.
Yes.
Right? And it's with anything when it comes to learning, right? When you go to school, they have a specific structure. Yes, that structure is probably gearing people to sort of become good employees, so to speak, rather than necessarily, good business people. Just through the nature that the instruction is given.
True.
Right? Because it's like, okay, excuse me, you want to learn English, okay, here are the letters, okay? Now what do the letters sound like?
Yeah.
And now you put these specific letters together. These now form words. What do the words mean? And you start to sort of build this understanding based on that.
Yes.
And so it's very structured, right? But then you come to a point, like say if when it comes to learning English, that you now know enough of the basics to be able to formulate your own sentences.
Yes.
And to formulate your own paragraphs.
Yeah.
And now there's a really cool thing that we can do called creative writing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And you go and pull out whatever's in your brain and you go and write all that down. And what you create could be something so unique to you as an individual.
Yep.
Right? And that's where, you know, so you need this structure so that people can actually all have a common understanding of what is the language.
100%.
Right? But then you come to this point where to create something beautiful, or like something that's like artwork or a novel or something like that, you need to give that person that creative right to be able to do that.
Yes, to do that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's the same thing. I think I view that as the same thing in from that, you know, religious aspect or whether like that rules-based aspect of society where it's like, I think, you know, no matter what country you come from, or even if you're from a tribe,
yeah, exactly.
You know, you'd go and say, okay, is it right to kill your friend? Right? And I think everybody would universally agree, okay, you know, if Tarkyn's my friend, no, I can't kill him. Right? But then when it comes to like, and I think there was actually a study done on this where it's like, you know, so even in tribes, right, they have this understanding that it's wrong to kill another person.
Okay, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But what they do is then, so like let's say it's a person from another tribe.
Yeah, yeah.
They actually don't view that person as being the same as them.
Yes.
They go, okay, well, no, like Tarkyn's my friend. He's the same as me.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is wrong to kill Tarkyn.
Yeah.
But these people from this other tribe,
exactly,
they're not human.
Nah.
They might as well like be like
a goat.
be a goat, be animals, whatever.
Yeah.
That's why it's okay for me to kill them.
Wow.
Right. And so, but they do have this concept that it is wrong to actually kill.
That is wrong. Yeah.
Right. So there's probably this, you know, and I still. Seesaw on this idea that maybe like whether objective morality exists.
Okay.
You know, from that perspective of, you know, I feel like a lot of it is subjective.
Yeah.
Right? Because we grew up with these ideas. Yeah. And our parents tell us, you know, you can't kill people. You can't do this. You can't do that. But, you know, like, it seems like even in these, in tribal groups where, you know, they don't have access to any of this sort of idea of religion and things like that. Like their culture is still the same way, that it's wrong to kill, it's wrong to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So, you know, perhaps there is an objective morality that comes with being human.
100%.
That you don't get.
That's crazy.
If you're an animal.
That's crazy.
So let's switch gears a bit. I want to talk about tiling because I'm always curious about, you know, different occupations and things like that. So how did you fall into tiling?
Yeah, so it's a pretty crazy story actually. So when I was in the Manly system, there was a lovely man called Glenn Moore, and he's currently and still is the Manly careers advisor at the Seagulls, and he got me in touch with my boss now, Ryan Lawrence, because he was trying to figure out, okay, do you want to do an apprenticeship? Do you want to study? All these different options, and I was like, okay, honestly, I think I want to do an apprenticeship. And he was like, okay, well, I'll get back to you in a few weeks. And he came back with a massive list of apprenticeships only on the northern beaches. I was like, okay, sweet, perfect. A few of them were, you know, your standard chippy, sparkies, drain layers, plumbers, all these apprenticeships. There was one for diesel mechanic. There was a lot. And he was like, okay, look, I think you should pick something that's out of the ordinary, one that's you think you would enjoy, two, and one that you feel as though is not your average trade. Because at the time, he was helping a lot of the Manly boys, and all of them were like, no, I want to be a chippy, I want to be a sparky, just that, nothing else. Don't give me any other option. I just want to do a chippy trade. I just want to do my electrical trade. Whereas I think he was kind of fed up that everyone was just saying he wanted, like, I just want to do this, I just want to do that. So he opened the idea to be like, maybe look for something else. So I took it on board. I was like, okay, well, what are the options besides being a sparky or a chippy?
Yeah.
Because even me, like your average Joe, I would say, would be like, oh, you're trading, what, you're a chippy, you're a sparky? So I didn't know. I was like, okay. So he was like, okay.
I'll just pause you there for 1 second.
Yeah.
I should tell this story. So Wollongong Wars the other week.
Oh, yeah.
So, I always like to ask, people what they do for work.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was that many guys that were chippies.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like normally I make a bit of a pun about when they come into the cage about, if you're a chippy, let's see if you can chop this guy down or whatever, I try and come up with some funny one-liners that relate to their trade.
Yeah.
But there was that many chippies that I gave up. Like halfway through, it's like there's only so many ways that I can talk about chopping somebody down. So it is very common that people end up in that. So sorry, back to your story.
That's awesome. So he encouraged me to look for a different trade. So I actually went on the TAFE New South Wales website and looked at the data sheet and looked at the amount of people that graduated from each trade throughout the last 10 years and then the last 5 years. Just so I can get a gauge of, obviously the demand and the competition that I would have to deal with once I end up graduating.
Yep.
So I had a look. Everything was, your substantial tradies, like chippies would finish the most, then it would be sparkies, then plumbers and all those things. So I scroll down, and right at the end was the Cert 3 floor and wall tiling, where in the last 10 years, there's been a total like thousands, just like
very small number.
Very small number. And the last 5 years was worse compared to everyone else. It was in the hundreds. And I was like, wait, why the hell do people hate tiling? Like, and I had a look, did my research, and it's obviously bad for your back and all these things. But then it got me to thinking, like, yeah, because people put themselves in that situation. They, take on a job and they have to rush, so they don't do the right protocols to, one, look after your health, not go after safety protocols, or just, end up you're just working and you're not working smart as opposed to just getting the job done. So I took the benefit of the doubt and I was like, Glenn, is there would you happen to have like a tiler looking for an apprentice? And he's like, dude, there hasn't been a tiler apprentice on the Northern Beaches in like 5 to 10 years. Like, you're ridiculous. But I'll try and find you one. And I was like, okay, sweet. And lucky enough, like the week after, my boss was sent an ad out looking for a tiler. Yeah. So it was just like I said, everything happens for a reason. Perfect timing, man. Very blessed. And got me onto him. And at the time, I was working installing skylights in a factory in Parramatta and Ryde. And I was like, dude, I need to do an apprenticeship. So then, ended up giving him a call, and he liked me from the get-go because I was Kiwi. He was like, man, I could listen to your accent forever. Don't even have to work. So I was like, sweet, son, done deal. Yeah. Ended up going to him for about a week, just for like a little trial. And he loved me, and I'm still with him now. And oh man, I absolutely love tiling. Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love it.
I feel like it's one of those jobs that if you had OCD, it's a very rough
job.
Oh,
exactly.
Because you got to get everything lined up
exactly.
Perfectly. Otherwise, it's just going to nick you.
Oh man. Yeah. But it's good because now I'm in the situation where I have my tiling and I have my Jiu Jitsu, so both of them kind of align with how technical you have to be. Like, let's say your joint, like one tile doesn't line up, the whole job's shit. Yeah. Or if one sequence you're practicing, then in jiu-jitsu, then the whole technique's bad because then you won't end up doing the right technique. So for me, tiling is like perfect because I'm real technical and I'm real I want everything to be aligned. I want everything to be, good, and I want everything to look nice as well. So obviously for everyone, tiling isn't like your massive tradie, he's a tradie. Yeah. Because in our industry, the Koreans are dominant in the industry, where the Koreans are honestly the best tilers ever, man. I'll tell you.
And they work ridiculous hours.
Oh,
they're
exactly.
happy to work from 12 to 6 a.m. in the morning.
Goodness, you have no idea the work ethic of these guys because they love the trade. They love tiling. They love the aspect of making sure the joints are aligned. They love the aspect of making sure everything's plumb, making sure that they have these really sharp cuts that it fits in perfectly. That aspect is just, they thrive that. And that's one thing that I've had to understand was, okay, they're so passionate about tiling, Koreans in particular, they're so passionate about tiling, why can't I be passionate about it? And that's why now I'm real passionate about it, and I'm just like, I go to work and I tell everyone, because they're like, oh man, I don't know any Tylers that, you know, that are around. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm telling you, like, I enjoy my job. I love my job. Like, I rock up to work and I'm like, man, I'm putting on like a tile. Now the next day I'm taking off a tile. Like the next day I'm grouting. Like there's a lot of things that just people just don't know that us tilers do. So yeah, crazy how I came up to be a tiler. And now I'm a second year now. Yep. And yeah, looking forward to finishing my trade, and yeah, I absolutely love it, bro. That's awesome.
So then, was that something that all the clubs do to try and help the younger boys? You know, so they get them a trade while they're playing as well.
They get them a trade, and Glenn Moore in particular, he does massive hours, man. He's an absolute legend on the Northern Beaches. He was a firefighter, and he does a lot of work with the Seagulls, and not only the Seagulls, a lot of boys that come overseas. So a lot of Kiwi boys. He has a lot of contacts with the clubs that, you know, they have Kiwi boys come over, and he tries to help them out. So that I feel as though that goes under the radar a lot, because a lot of clubs, I would say, back in the day, would just be like, yeah, here's a factory job, you know, like your priority is footy. Whereas Glenn and like the Seagulls, they do now is, you know, hey, look, like footy is footy, but you need to have a backup, which is awesome. And yeah, Glenn Moore was a massive figure, like still is a massive figure in my life, and he got me this really good opportunity to become a tiler, and yeah, cannot thank him enough. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's important. No matter if you're pursuing any sort of professional sporting endeavor, you know, you've got a limited career window.
Exactly, man.
For your sport.
Exactly.
Right? And so, you know, you don't want to be continuing to compete past your prime, because all you're doing then is just putting your body on the line.
Exactly, 100%.
Right? And yeah, it's one of those things that unless you've got the right sort of mentality about it, like some guys have approach it in the right way, that you know, when their career ends and that door's closed, they're willing to, you know, take a backward step to go and learn something new. Yeah. Right? And hopefully, you know, if you are a professional athlete, you get yourself to a point where monetarily you're okay. Yeah. Right? So that, you know, you're doing something out of interest.
Interest.
As opposed to out of necessity, right?
Yes.
So, but I think it's always important that you need to have that that backup. Like I've got a mechanical trade as my background.
Exactly. That's crazy.
And, you know, like I think it gives you a very good grounding to then realize that, hey, you know, the sport is important.
Yes.
But you need to have something beyond that.
Yeah.
Because once those days are past you, then it's like, okay, now what?
Exactly.
Right? And if you got nothing to go to, it's really easy to hit a pretty 100%. Dark place pretty quickly. Yeah.
And like for yourself, like you've got your mechanical trade, you've been in that industry for so long. Yeah. So, you know, if something bad was to happen, you can fall back into that straight away. Yeah. So I think that's a massive thing I would tell like younger athletes as well. It's like, dude, like if footy is your goal, if like MMA is your goal, like have that, but bro, have a plan B, bro, because you just don't know what can happen.
Well, I think, you know, you brought it up before about the translation of skills in terms of, you know, trying to get the angles right, trying to get all those things right. Yeah. I think people often, why people switch off learning something in particular is because they don't see the connection in terms of how this can actually benefit their life. Yeah. Right? So when I was running one of the dealerships, we used to run this program with one of the community organisations where kids who were at risk of disengaging from school. So like, they might have been in year 8 or year 9 and like they'd lost interest, and they're probably, you know, they'll be called bad kids, so to speak.
Oh, true.
Right? Okay. So, but really they're just kids that don't see how school benefits them.
Yes, yeah, right? At that time,
Yeah. And so, you know, we'd go and take them on a bit of a tour throughout the business to go and say, okay, these are all the different jobs that you could do in a dealership. Yeah. And trying to help them to understand, you know, why maths is important, as an example.
And you were leading that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I used to walk them around and give them a bit of a tour and things like that. And
that's awesome.
So we actually gave them a little show bag as well to take home. It's like a bit of marketing as well. Yeah. But something nice for the community. So, you know, those kids would come in and they don't understand, you know, why it's important to, say, learn maths or learn English or whatever. And so then, you know, I'd say take them to the sales department. I'd say, okay, this is why it's important that you have a basic understanding of maths because you need to know how the numbers add up to give you the price. That's one thing. And then, look at the fine print on this contract.
Yeah.
If your English skills aren't good, how are you going to read this?
Yeah, true.
Are you just going to sign it? Like, is that what you do? And then they go, oh, okay, so, I need to make sure that I can understand the words that are in this, right?
That's cool, man.
And then, take them to the service department and help them to see, okay, so, if we're selling parts, same thing. You need to be able to, run a till.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody gives you $100, here's the change.
Yeah.
How do you calculate that? Yeah. All that sort of stuff. And just trying to help them to see the link between what they're learning in school and how that might actually benefit them when they come to working in an industry. Sort of environment. Right? And so that mindset can apply to almost anything.
Crazy.
So
that does.
So like, excuse me. Like a lot of the times people, if they go and do something that's unrelated to their sporting discipline, right? So let's even say school versus the sporting discipline. They go, okay, I'm going to be a professional athlete. I'm going to go and play footy.
Okay.
What do I need to know this English stuff for?
Yeah, exactly.
What do I need to know this math stuff for? But they don't understand that, as an athlete, you are the commodity.
Yeah.
Right? So you being the commodity, you're going to sign contracts and paperwork.
Exactly.
Right? You might be blessed with a great manager or a great agent that helps you to walk you through those things.
Yeah.
But at some point, these people aren't going to be with you throughout your entire life.
Yes.
When your career comes to a close and you're no longer in that professional sporting industry, you've now got to go out into business on your own.
Yeah.
And if you haven't taken the time to try and understand these things, then it's actually going to be to your detriment.
Exactly. Eventually.
That
you just don't see at this present time because everything's good.
Yeah. But likewise, when it comes to picking up new skills, right? The fact that you can, I think learning is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
Right? So learning how to play footy, so learning how to tackle, as an example, is something that could directly translate into Jiu Jitsu.
Exactly.
From a wrestling standpoint.
But people don't want to learn skills.
Yeah.
Like learning a new skill it's a lot of people are like, oh man, that's an effort. It's an effort. But, like learning a new skill is pretty cool, man.
It's
like,
fun. Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun.
You got to make it fun. I think you got to turn it into a bit of a game for yourself where the goal is not necessarily to be better than someone else.
Yes.
But for you yourself to be better than you were.
Yeah, before you tried. Yes, exactly. 100%.
All right, let's switch gears one more time. I want to talk about Star Wars.
Oh, yes. Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. Thank you.
So, they call you the Padawan.
Yeah.
So the Padawan obviously being like the apprentice of a Jedi Knight.
That's it.
So, it's actually quite a common theme that Jiu-Jitsu guys seem to like Star Wars. But I guess when did your affinity for Star Wars begin, and why Star Wars? Like, what do you love about it?
The first ever movie I saw was when I first came to New Zealand, and it was The Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
So 2007, I think.
Yep.
It was not when I first came, but that was like the first movie that I watched. And just seeing how Anakin changed, into being Darth Vader, at the time I was like, man, this is badass. Like, holy heck. Because at the time, everyone was into Harry Potter. And everyone was into a lot of these other movies. But I was like, like every time we would have a mufti day in school, I'd rock up as Darth Vader. Oh man.
So you had the full suit?
Yeah, full suit, the helmet, everything. And I always used to have I used to buy the $5 lightsabers from the warehouse and rock up to school every time we had like a custom day. And I used to throw off it, man. Yeah. And then I eventually, that kind of stuck with me because I was like, man, a lot of my mates, like obviously, like a lot of my Islander mates, they're like, Star Wars, what the hell? And everyone's like, nah, Star Wars is for nerds, and like Lord of the Rings is for nerds. And I'm like, nah, man. Like,
it's not really a coconut thing.
100%. I'm being serious, dead ass. And like, I was like, no, I'm telling you, like Star Wars for me was like kind of my escape from like my little thing. And then that kind of came to fruition with like Lord of the Rings as well, because Lord of the Rings was filmed in New Zealand, the original one, and that's when those are the two things that I held on to. So and even now, like I'm real obsessed with Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. I probably spend like, if you look through my YouTube history, I spend like 20 hours watching like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings videos just on YouTube, like extra stuff like, what would happen if like Gandalf took the ring, like in Lord of the Rings, or in Star Wars, like what would happen if Yoda turned into the Sith Lord? Yeah. I just like all these analogies, like bro, I'm that obsessed. It's crazy.
So what is it about the universe, those universes that draws you to it?
I think just for me, it like reminds me of a time where I was in primary school where I was going outside and playing, like in the backyard, and then coming in and my parents would watch the news, but I would like play with my Star Wars action figures, and I would like watch YouTube, like things about Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. So the reason why I hold that like close to my heart, because it brings the inner kid in me. It brings me back to the time where I was like, oh my gosh, Star Wars, how cool. And Lord of the Rings, how cool. And for me, it's like I said, we talked about like during this podcast, is like your safe haven. Like for me, I'm drawn to Star Wars and I'm drawn to Lord of the Rings because that's my safe haven. Whereas like other people are like, man, that's like nerdy ass shit. But I'm telling you, it's cool as hell.
There's always like in any of those sorts of artistic works, there's like these really strong thematic sort of examples, right? Like if we think about the story of Star Wars, it's almost like, it's talking about generational values, right? That one's good, one's bad.
One's bad, and it goes on
good again, bad. Yeah, and it's just sort of like, it's almost like a generational curse.
Yeah.
That every second generation is either going to be good or bad.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's this never-ending battle between good and evil, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I quite like that because you can't have one without the other.
Yes. They balance each other out.
Yeah. And this is where, people wish that their life was like all good, so to speak. But even if it was all good, all that means is that you've gotten a new baseline for what good is.
For what good is.
Yeah. And they're still going to be bad.
Yeah.
Anything that's slightly less than good becomes the bad.
But then when the bad happens, that's when it's really bad. And then there's no balance.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy to think that. But like we touched on before, it's like, especially in Star Wars in particular, it's, for me, it's my safe haven because it goes to show like there's always good, there's always evil, and there's always excitement. So, and it's something that's like, oh man, getting nerdy just thinking about it.
And then what is it about Lord of the Rings that you?
For me, Lord of the Rings for me is just like, if I was to rank Lord of the Rings or Star Wars at the moment, I was more into Star Wars when I was growing up. But now it's kind of like a mix and match. But for me, Lord of the Rings is like top tier. I don't know what it is. It's just the storyline, because it's actually, the storyline was, so the author Tolkien, he actually wrote the storyline based on Christianity. So the whole part of the ring is to resemble like the devil, Satan, so to speak, and how everyone's trying to fight for this one ring, but once it's gone, then it's peace. So that's the reason why I kind of hold a lot of things that's happened in the Lord of the Rings, like not so much into my life, but my faith as well, because there's that link between Christianity, and for me, I get nerded out on, the thought of just that it was directed in New Zealand, filmed in New Zealand by a director, Peter Jackson. So that's why I throw off Lord of the Rings. Like read all the books.
Cinematically, it's beautiful.
Oh, it's crazy. But see, here's the thing: when I say Lord of the Rings, and don't get it twisted, it's Lord of the Rings like the Fellowship, the Twin Towers, and then the Return of the King. The Hobbit is not the Lord of the Rings. I'm saying that right now. Very specific.
That's when you experience like those good sort of. Did you read the books? Like, were you a fan of the books as well?
Oh, fan of the books, because like I wasn't like, obviously when you're a kid, like when you give someone a book and they're not interested in it, like a little kid, they're not going to read it.
Yeah.
Like my parents would give me like, in my school, to give me like Batman, Spider-Man. I wasn't interested in that.
Really?
But they would give me Lord of the Rings. I'm like, yeah, I love this shit. Yeah, okay. I'll actually read. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because for me, I really like also the Dune series. I don't know if you've ever read Dune. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
And it was funny because I started rereading the Dune series.
Oh, did you?
When COVID happened.
Oh, okay.
Because when I was a kid, my brother used to play. We had this computer game called Dune 2, and it was like it was like sort of like the precursor to StarCraft. It was like a real-time strategy game. You build, you collect resources.
Yeah.
You build things to fight other armies and things like that.
Yeah.
And when I started rereading the books, especially during COVID times, there were so many things that it was like, is this like life imitating art or art imitating life?
Exactly.
Like you could see so many things that were happening. Like there's one thing where it's like they talk about engineering a disease in the books and using that to control the populations. It's like okay, well.
Exactly. Elephant in the room. We're not going to say it.
there's some parallels going on here.
Exactly.
And then there's this. I've been going on like this AI deep dive
at
the present moment, and that's also covered in the books as well.
Yeah. Wow. There you go.
Yeah, like in the history, it's like mankind unleashed AI, and then eventually it became the master of civilization, so to speak. And then there's like this whole series about trying to fight the AI and destroy technology, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it's like, where do you draw the line?
That's what I'm saying.
So
where do you draw the line?
Do you say that you can't have any technology whatsoever? You can't drive a car.
Exactly.
Right? Or do you say it's only intelligent technology? Like, what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line? So
see, when I was going through that phase, that was a massive thinking process for me too. Was like the whole AI thing, and when I guess a lot of people were hooked on that game, I was hooked on Age of Empires, which is another another strategy civilization game. So that's a game where I was connected to when everyone else was on all these other games. Yeah. So shout out to Age of Empires.
Yeah, yeah. No, like those sorts of things those games are great because they really make you think about what is this existence that we're living?
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah.
But we're living in like this really exciting time at the present moment.
Oh, 100%. You literally do not know what's going to happen. But it's awesome to think. And like, obviously growing up playing games for me was like, it was a massive thing because that's, like I said, I grew up like being a quiet kid. So that was kind of my safe haven was to be like, okay, I'm just going to go on the computer game, play a computer game after like all muddied up from playing outside. Yeah. Like literally playing outside with my mates and then coming home, like still in my like dirty clothes and just playing a computer game, like all these things. But it's awesome and it's crazy to think how video games are still relevant to like life that we live in now. And that's that's the balance that I guess we have to find because you don't want to let that take over your life, so to speak. So.
Yeah, well, they're a great distraction as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and you can get sucked up into those sorts of things, and then at some point, it's like when those games become more attractive than real life, that's when we're really going to have a problem.
That's a massive problem. That a lot of these kids like they're not going to realize, but I'm glad I grew up like games just started coming in. Yep. But it was more so focusing on that's your own time, but like. When it's time to play with your mates, when it's time to go out and like kick a footy ball or just go out and just be stupid playing off a pond, like just like normal kid things that you would do, that's the priority. Yep. But then when you're when your parents are asleep, when nothing else is going on, then you turn to video games.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, well, I think that's a great place to sort of wrap it up.
Yeah,
if people want to find you, how do they find you?
On Instagram at Tarkyn_Loloselo. And that's pretty much it.
All right, sweet.
My
Thank you.
Socials.
No, it's good. So if people want to find you for tiling,
if people want to find me for tiling, North Set Tile and Stone. We only do tiling on the northern beaches, and that's pretty much it.
All right, sweet. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.